I'm going to call the February 13th, 2025 Board of Education Community Information Meeting to order. Let me hold this mic, see if that'll help. It's on red. Is it on? I hit it.
It's going red.
Let's try this again. It's still red.
I don't see it, but
I'm not out here. Yeah. You want on? All right, hot mic. You want on? You want on?
How about this? Okay.
they're not turned up. He was doing something with the engine.
Are you good, Elliot?
Yeah.
We're going to try that again. I'm going to call the February 13th, 2025 Board of Education Community Information Meeting to order. Good evening, and we thank you all for being here tonight. We know the discussions about school redistricting and realignment are never easy, and we deeply appreciate your time and your concern and also your dedication to your children and this community. We want to begin by acknowledging that the growth in this county is something that none of us can fully control. Our board did not create the overcrowding issues that we're dealing with, but we, however, have a responsibility to address those. So our schools, and especially Locust and Stanfield, have experienced significant overcrowding simply because the community is growing. As you all know, when you drive around and look, you know we have all of these neighborhoods that are popping up, and like I say, we have no control over that. But to help alleviate the overcrowding and to make use of the new 10 classroom addition that we're building at Andy, we're here tonight to share information about a potential redistricting solution. So I do want to remind you that the meeting tonight is just informational. We're here, um, basically here to give you information. We want you to be open-minded. We're here to give you the specifics as we know them. Please know that this board has not voted on anything that you're going to see tonight, and we will not do so tonight. So we will not be making any decisions tonight. We're here just to provide the facts, and we're also here to answer the submitted questions that you were able to send in online. I think you were able to do that up until 12 o'clock today. So again, we thank you for being here and for your commitment to your schools and for the willingness to work together to make important decisions. I do ask you as we move forward with the meeting tonight that we try to do that with respect for each other, with understanding and a focus on what's best for our county as a whole. Dr. Dennis is going to be presenting the information tonight, but I also have asked Dustin Lisk, our vice chair, to assist with that. Dustin has served on the board finance and the facility committee for the past 3 years. So he, I think, would be an asset in order to do the presentation tonight. So I will turn it over to Dr. Dennis and Mr. Lisk.
Good afternoon again. I'm Jared Dennis, superintendent, and joining me will be Dustin Lisk, our vice chair. And the reason he's going to join us is he's been on every iteration of the finance and facilities committee's meetings. He's been through them all since the inception of us applying for grants and things we'll talk about. So he'll be able to provide any extra details or anything that I might leave out due to his staff. And you did mention as far as about asking questions, there were about 30 questions submitted last time I checked. It may be a little higher. Only a couple of them really had to do with logistics, and I baked those into this presentation. But anything that was added about anyone's personal child, of course, I will not address in this public forum. So the genesis was where all this started was we did, well, I'm assuming we did, but as a group, but the Board of Education noticed that we were getting a lot of students in the western end, and there were a lot of properties and a lot of subdivisions that were being approved. So obviously you start looking at influx of people, not from just around Stanley County, but from different areas, and you see that more housing is going to become available in the near future. You have to look at, well, what are we going to do to help navigate those waters? What are we going to help to mitigate any potential overcrowding that comes down the road? So in March of 2022, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, what they did was they put out something, and it was codified in general statute, called a needs-based grant. A needs-based grant, they use your lottery money to fund building. It's only capital. I use the word capital a lot. When I use capital, I mean building. I mean floors, walls, things like that. It's separate funding than the funding we pay teachers or pay instructional materials and all that of. There's just a fund, and all we can do with it is brick and mortar, if that makes sense, or things that are attached to brick and mortar. So this needs-based grant through DPI, at the time in 22, I believe you could get 30,000 for elementary, 40,000 for middle, and 50,000 for high. And you could ask for smaller amounts. Those were the maximum amounts at each level. And so the board, seeing a need for, especially the western end, decided to apply for these grants. And out of the 3 grants, 2 of them were to look at the growth in the western end. And it was an expansion on Indy, and it was funding to expand West Stanley Middle School, which were 2 schools that we knew were starting to grow. And the county commissioners did approve the 5% match if we were awarded the grant, which they have to do by general statute, but we did not receive any funding for the grants. Now, 2 other words I'm going to use through this are Tier 1 and Tier 2. There's 3 tiers of counties. The counties, I'm just going to call them for lack of, for understanding, the poor counties are Tier 1. They can't generate as much revenue. Tier 2 is the ones who fall in the middle. That's your Stanley County and some other counties. Tier 3 is like your Charlotte, Mex, and Wake counties who have an abundance of money and revenue. So we're a Tier 2 county. At this time, they were only awarding Tier 1 counties. We applied, we didn't get it, and we'll discuss that a little later. So the Indy planning and the pre-planning phase, there was approval for an addition to Indy Elementary School. On November 2022, the board approved a motion for the superintendent to move forward with the planning of Indy Elementary School. Now, also in the next month in December of 2022, Stanley County Schools contract with a company called Numerex LLC to get the population study and produce a 10-year population forecast for Stanley County.
Yeah, I mean, the committee knew at the time that what everyone knows, all the schools on the western end were at capacity. We have internal numbers that showed both Indy, Locust, Stanfield, Oakboro is a choice school, but seats 412, that even at the K-5 level, that they were at capacity. The county had not done any real construction in a very long time. The school board doesn't control, we're not a taxing authority. We don't have the ability to lend money. We can't place a bond on the ballot. But we had to look at what was the most cost-effective way that we could get approval from our county commissioner board to address the need at Locust and Stanfield and within Indy. And so as we sit today, and maybe you have the numbers, without the addition, we're at 110% at Indy of capacity. We're at 107 in Stanfield, 115% in Locust, and Oakboro K-5's at 102. The school operated on a state waiver. So a few years ago, the legislators, North Carolina legislators, implemented a K-3 class size law. And what that means is that at kindergarten, we have to have a district average, all public schools, not charters, not privates, that's a whole separate conversation, or choice schools, such as Oakboro. But you have to have a kindergarten district average of 18. I think it's 16 for first grade and 17 for second and third. So it means if you've got 21 in one class, then we need 15 in another. And there's, as we sit, where are we going to put the kids? We need new construction in the county. The school board has asked for that. The 2005 study, which is about 1,200 pages long, projected this growth. It was much cheaper then. The cost to construct has about tripled, whereas our revenue for the county has not even doubled over that 20-year period. The same studies in 2015 predicted this growth. The demographer studies were fairly accurate. It called for new construction on the western end, and it just hasn't been done. So we're at a point where the board in 2022, working closely with the commissioner board, had unanimous approval on both sides to add the Indy addition, which would add 250 seats and alleviate some of the growth that we've experienced on Locust and Stanfield. So that's sort of where we got. And then I think you're going to go sort of into how we ordered this study. And we just recently did the second iteration of that study.
Thank you. And I'm going to go into both those studies. So in December 2022, we contracted with Numerex LLC to conduct a population study and produce a 10-year population forecast. Numerex, the company that was recommended to us through a architect we were speaking with at the time, they said either go with him or go with North Carolina State. They also do the same work. This guy used to be head of that division in North Carolina State. He kind of broke off on his own, and he's out of Charleston and does a lot of work for a lot of counties, especially a lot of larger counties looking to have large redistricting. So in January 2023, we advertised an RFQ for architectural services, include the planning. So we're still in the pre-planning of a 10-room addition to Indy Elementary School. In 2023, we interviewed architects, and Pinnacle Architecture was chosen to design and oversee the construction of an addition to Indy Elementary. In June of that year, we received a population forecast from Numerex. I'm going to show you in just a second, as a presentation to the board at a work session on June 29, 2023. The Board of Education also approved a motion to secure funding for Indy Elementary School at $4.5 million, which was the estimated cost from the architect. Shortly thereafter, the Stanley County Commissioners approved the $3.5 million funding for the Indy expansion project. $1 million of the 4.5 would come from Stanley County Schools in the form of a $500,000 per year over 2 years and reoccurring needs-based funds from the state. This is a little different than the needs-based grant. We get $500,000 a year funding to use for facilities as we see needed. So we said we'll bank that for 2 years, and we'll help offset the cost of this if we were to build this 10-room extension in Indy. So you don't need to see the numbers to understand what I'm going to tell you. So this is a heat map. This is the entire district, all the schools. At the top group is elementary. The middle group is, of course, middle. And the last group is your high schools. And so if you're looking at your colors, 90% means you're less than 90% capacity. You got room. You're in good shape. 90 to 100 is yellow. So you're at or right below capacity. Orange is 100 to 110%. So when you get to orange, you're over capacity. And the red, of course, red being over 110%, that means you're way above capacity. If you'll look at you see the orange at the very top corner is 2 little orange bars. Don't worry about that, but look at the first long one that's orange and turned red. That was in the elementary through the 2023 study. You'll go a couple more down. That's Locust that's under there. You see it's orange coming to capacity. Right now in the 2024-25 year, which we're in now, Numerex had them both above the 110% capacity. And if you look at the very bottom one in the elementary group, that's Stanfield. And you see that he saw them approaching capacity.
And I'll add too, this study was on the 22-23 school year. So the second study that you'll see that came out the first of this year was on the 24-25 school year. So the way that they pull these numbers and the way the state funds and how kids come and kids go throughout the year is they pull month 2 average daily membership, which is a state word for students. So your month 2 is your statistically most relevant number out of the 10 months. State funds, I think child nutrition on month 10, which is a lot lower. So you see that, and I'll tell you, there's another map that's a lot better than this. It's on board docs. I think Ashley, you saw it today. I'm going to point you out. But it goes by ends of the county. It goes like Albemarle, the northern end, the southern end, and the western end. And what you see on the western end, it's all red and orange. And Indy right here sits 26 seats over capacity in 22-23 school year. So we already knew, as I came on the board in late 21 going into 22, that we were going to be in trouble on the western end without construction, and that something had to be done and something had to be done immediately. And so I just wanted to note that out because this one is a little bit hard to read. But if you look, again, all the western schools, West Stanley, I can't remember if I noted that a minute ago, is at 113%. So the middle school is at 113%. West Stanley High School on this here, this map, and the other one for the 22-23 school year is at 94%. We are going to be over capacity at the high school, and the projections are pretty much spot on. Less than, it's plus or minus 1% in 3 years. So not only do you need a new elementary school for the western end, an addition on the middle school, you got to remember, if you've ever walked that middle school, what was it? It was built as an elementary school. It was Running Creek Elementary. So the wings are really small. There's one bathroom on each wing. If you've ever gone through there with students sitting in the hall, you sort of have to meander down through. But you're going to, the western end is going to have new construction, increased capacity. However you want to look at it, increased capacity, an addition on the middle school, and you're going to have either a major renovation at the high school to expand capacity or a new high school. In fact, you can't even bring Oakboro back into the western feeder. And if you've lived out here like I have, or lived in Stanley County for your entire life, there's nowhere to put Oakboro. So the reason that we see an uptick, according to the demographer on the southern end, is because of the growth in Oakboro. And I think I was speaking with someone the other day, and there's 2 more developments of Trotter Ridge going up in Oakboro. So, we as a school board, a non-taxing authority, have no ability to lend money. We have to allocate what we're given, both from the state and the federal government and local monies, have to deal with the development as best we can. And so that's, again, I would go to board docs and check out the other map. It's easier to read than this one, but it's all the same numbers.
Yeah, you'll see in a minute. Just pay attention to the colors, and I'm going to give you another map in a minute. But again, in the middle school, of course, that red band is West Stanley Middle, and that red band in the bottom that creates at the end is West Stanley High School. So now we enter the planning phase. In October 2023, updates on the Indy septic system as the Stanley County Schools Board of Education prepares to build the project. So I know that had been a question, and we gave updates on the septic system in 23, and the septic system, everything's approved from the state of North Carolina for the build. On March 2024, Stanley County Schools request bids for the Indy expansion project. On April 2024, the facilities committee had an update on Indy driveway expansion because, of course, if you're going to expand a school, you got to expand a driveway to look at the additional traffic. And then as we move into May 2024, the Stanley County Schools approved J.M. Cope as the contractor for the project. The project is set to be completed in May of 2025 school year, or May of 2025 for the 25-26 academic year. And I can tell you, was talking to the superintendent the other day, he says that everything's in line for it to be finished May of 2025 and for it to be open for the 25-26 school year. Of course, we know anything can change, but right now it's looking like it's going to be on time. So in August 2024, as we know we're moving forward into building the school, the Board of Education asked me to contact Numerex for proposal to generate student assignment scenarios to be implemented for the 25-26 school year. And the scenarios are to better balance utilization among schools and to accommodate expected growth as it comes, knowing that what we have and the addition we're going to have. So we hired a demographer because I'm not a demographer, my team's not a demographer, and Numerex, they're professionals, they've done this before, so they created a plan for us, for the board. Anything before I go into reassignment? All right. Okay. So a lot of this is adapted from Numerex. You'll notice I give them their credentials at the bottom. So Mike Miller of Numerex, he conducted the study, and he's also the one who built this assignment plan. And he's produced this assignment plan, and he's actually introduced it to the facilities committee and to the whole board during work session. And we've done everything kind of through him. So an overview, what we're going to do, we're going to look at a review of the 22-23 membership forecast. We've kind of already done that, so we're not going to really go back to that too hard, but we are going to talk about some stuff you talked about as far as his confidence numbers and things like that, and where he might have missed and where he's on target with some of the forecasts from the 22-23 forecast. So we'll look at that off-target analysis, any development updates as far as developments that have improved since he did the initial forecast, student assignment objectives and assumptions. Then he gave us, and he gave the board draft 1 of assignment scenario. This is the initial draft. This draft will be discussed at the next work session in March, and then next steps. And I won't go through the appendices. So the 2023 membership forecast and land use study. again, was presented June 29, 2023. The average annual growth will be 135 over the next 10 years, 1,352 total. And the average K-13 growth rate, 1.47 over the next 10 years. The month 2, which is like you referred to, that's the month they like to use to say, this is the number of kids you're going to have this year. The numbers are below. So the more important thing is that he's like, well, where was I off? Because no one's perfect when it comes to forecasting people. And so in elementary, and let me go through this before making conclusions. He said it was all 41 kids. So out of 41, 42, between 41 and 4,200 kids, he was only off 41 kids. In middle school, with almost 2,000 kids, he was only off 17. With the high school, off a little more, closer to 100. But still, if you look at the total, the error over 2 years is off 1.8%. And I know he had said something about how much he likes to be off or within the
So-
confidence factor.
Yeah, anything within less than 1% a year is statistically accurate. The demographer is pretty comfortable with that. And if you go back and look at the historical studies, which are public documents, 2005, 2015, those were fairly accurate. And what you see is sort of a decline downwards. And now you're seeing this trending upwards. And what I hope you also walk away with tonight is all these kids are coming through the system, and it's sort of like a heat wave. I mean, you're coming through the elementary, you're coming through the middle, you're coming through the high school, and it doesn't appear to be slowing down. But that's a pretty statistically accurate number of less than 1% per year.
Thank you. He said he was very satisfied with the numbers. So when he looked at his off-target analysis, so where did he miss and kind of what was going on? So the virtual education, we are actually kind of phasing our virtual education out with the lower kids because we don't have many going into it. We can't see trying to pay for a low amount of kids to use this option. It's just not a good use of resources. So we've even phased our kindergarten first and second out, and we'll keep phasing them out, but we'll keep the secondary. That's our plan anyway. And we have a kind of different plan for how to serve those. So those naturally came off because some of them didn't want to come back to a brick and mortar school. They may have sought other opportunities, and we knew that was going to happen. But overall, the K-5 forecast was over by 40 students. Stanford Elementary was well under forecasted and grew by 80 students over 2 years. Norwood actually saw some growth too from the upper end. And so the overall K-5 gain was 108 students over 2 years. The elementary schools in Albemarle were over forecasted because some of those subdivision approved have not yet come to fruition, and they lost about 60 kids over 2 years. Indy Elementary has no pre-K. We moved the pre-K out and put them in the private sector. We still have our pre-K for our students with needs. But overall, pre-K membership dropped, and we knew it would drop because, again, we put the Smart Start and all that back into the daycares from 55 to 44 at Aquadale only. Forecast errors used to recalibrate, blah, blah, blah. So the results of kind of his findings, and I'll go through this quickly, is with the membership forecast contains complete data and details. I'm going to show you a new forecast in a minute. About 370 developments of various types were identified in 22-23. He uses a GIS analysis of how we generate student potential, and for every developed residential lot generates 0.4 kids. Every developed residential acre of land is 0.26 kids. Those are just subdivisions that are coming up. I won't need to go through that. So any elementary school capacity is going to increase from 325 to 575 when we add the extra 250 kids. It's made to provide relief for West Elementary schools, which Indy, Locust, and Stanfield, and it's also, he made it to balance building utilization. We have to take into class, like you mentioned earlier, K-3 class size. So you can tell me what the capacity of a school is. That's not the capacity as far as when DPI says you can only put 17 kids in that room. I might, if I didn't have that, could put 25, 30 kids, not that I'd want to, but I could put more kids in that room, but DPI will not let us. And we have had to apply for waivers, and I know Norwood and Stanfield recently, because we could not keep to that number. You can be at the numbers that Mr. List talked about earlier, and as an average for the district, but I can't max over 3 at each of that level. So if they're saying your average has to be 17, 20 is as many as I can put in that class. Even if I have one down the road that, you know, is a much smaller class, say at a smaller school like Millenport. So what you may see is, this is how many kids I can put in a school. Well, really, I can't put in that many into the school. So take that into account. I need more classroom space. It's not about people, it's about classroom space. And that's really it. So those students that are in these schools that are, we say overcrowded, are actually more overcrowded than you think they are because we're limiting the size of the classroom or the number in the size of the classroom, excuse me.
And I'll say this, that the legislature has considered grades 4 and 5, like it's on the docket. Um, change the capacity of the schools, because a common thing that I hear in the community is, well, grandma and grandpa went here, or I went there, and there were so many students there, and it's just changed. I mean, it's changed the number at each school, where, and I see some teachers here, where you have to form these classrooms. Oddly, I think we're putting up some partition walls at certain schools and classrooms. We're utilizing
We've had
every,
to split classrooms in half to make 2 classrooms.
yes, and there's a financial penalty from the state to the taxpayer if you don't start, like, once once we're over capacity and we're not abiding by the law, there's a financial penalty. And because we started the discussions and started the process on Indy, we were able to get a release of those waivers. But we're going to be right back in the same position, because you're going to see a map here. And once this is all said and done, even with the Indy addition, it's not a long-term solution. It fits into what can be a longer term plan for the county, but you're going to get Indy back at 90%. You're going to lower Locust to 95%. That's 23 seats available. You're going to have Stanfield at approximately 93%. And you still have the Oakboro building, which sits 412, and there's 281 in K5. So again, with the continued growth, we're going to be right back in the same position, and we're going to have to start preparing for it and making recommendations. And I do, before you go, want to thank our commissioners, Brandon King and Billy Mills, for coming. And Brandon did tour with us yesterday. We had 4 commissioners, including Mr. King, and I know Mr. Mills wants to come as well. So it's great to see them here, because both boards are going to have to work together to solve the longer term issue.
Thank you. And, he's talking about those numbers. Even if we go into, or the board, I should say, and my team, or it will be actually the demographer shows some different lines or some different way to stop, you're not going to get out of the 90s for all 3 of the schools. There's no way to shift it all the way out without, making one grossly, with too many kids in the school. So when he's doing the study, he wants to accommodate anticipated growth in residential development. Again, this is from Mr. Miller's slide deck. And the big thing was, and I think it was important for the board, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was to preserve the current elementary, middle school, high school feeder patterns. And why that's important is for a lot of reasons. I mean, I know even if it's uncomfortable, you have to move some schools or some things happen, to have to move a whole new feeder pattern is a whole different world as well. And so it was important to preserve those, because in some districts, when they start doing realignment, redistricting, whatever you want to call it, they start breaking up feeder patterns because it makes it a little easier to manage. But it was important for the board to keep the feeder pattern. They told Mr. Miller that when he addressed his plan. And also we have to consider transportation and accessibility. These are the numbers you referenced, so I won't go back over them. The 90%, the 95, and the 93. Oops. There we go. So this is the first draft. I'm sure if you're here, you've seen it. And what it does is it takes the outer boundary. The outer boundary is this red line on the other, you see where the arrows are kind of pointing in that area, and there's a red line. That's the original boundary for Indy. So it takes that and it pushes it out a little further into Stanfield, into Locust, to try to absorb some of those kids and keep the boundary, as far as he was talking about, to keep the boundary to where you wouldn't have to be splitting feeder patterns. So the next steps for the board, I'm about to wrap it up. Is there anything else?
Well, let me
Okay.
speak on this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is because I know we had a lot of questions come in. I see friends sitting out here, and we have 58 transfers between Locust and Stanfield. The majority of those are employees. There's some are rising 5th graders. Rising 6th graders currently in 5th grade, and there's 27 non-rising 6th graders, non-employee kids. 6 of them are Locust students sitting at Stanfield, and it's a little bit higher from Stanfield sitting at Locust. There's a handful that's Indy. one Baden, two Aquadale. So that's up for the board to consider on transfers is, okay, well, can they stay? By policy, they have the ability to send them back and revoke that transfer. The other part is grandfathering. And I know that has came up, and I know that the board is going to consider that. The board is asking for how many kids are affected for each grade, particularly fifth grade and fourth grade. How many siblings do these kids bring? And the board will go into the work session to review, is there any way to be able to grandfather in students that are there? And I'm not going to speak for the board, Madam Chair, or the superintendent, but I feel like that you saw some of the mandates that the board was looking for, like balancing the building utilization, clean feeder patterns, but the board's looking to accomplish the goal and affect the least amount of families as possible. So transfers are on the table, and grandfathering, if at all possible, is something that the board is going to seriously consider and look at it on a very granular basis. The only thing we don't know are rising kindergartners. I have a friend that has two kids in Locust with a rising kindergartner. I just know that, but we don't know how many other siblings would be. And so that's sort of part of the due diligent process before the board can really make a full decision. But I do know that every person up here takes this with, it does pull on your heartstrings. And there are friends that are affected. And I know for me personally, I don't take the decision very lightly. And it is one that will come with extensive due diligence, extensive consideration. However, the board has to redistrict in this case. We have to alleviate it. We have to stay off the penalty box with the state of North Carolina, and we're going to have to focus longer term on how we're going to accomplish increasing capacity on the western end. And the way that you saw the map earlier, which is a draft, we look at that as part of a longer term vision, or at least the board has so far, that even if there's new construction in different areas of the western end, multiple either major renovations or new construction, that we're affecting the least amount of families with this redistrict here.
Thank you. And just moving back, we have a work session, grandfathering will be a topic that I've been told will be brought up. We have a transfer policy that's open to all families. The transportation department will import new boundaries to generate bus routes. Right now, they have a goal, especially in some of our more rural areas, of trying to keep a complete bus route under 90 minutes. And during our work session, Mike felt confident he could do that. And then we'll have to notify parents individually through whatever media we find most effective of the assignment changes. There's the appendix. Now, remember what you saw earlier. I know this is in a little different format. This is the most recent updated format as far as the population forecast. And as you can see, it got read a lot quicker than he thought it would at first. And it got read extremely fast. So now, if you look at the two top, that's Indian Locust. Indian Locust got into the red last year. I'm sorry.
So your top is this.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I apologize. It got switched. Yeah. So now you were talking about this earlier, the east, west, and all that. So that's the west with all the red. All the
bottom category is the western end.
Yeah. So the bottom category, the western end, has all the western schools in it. The first two schools are Indy and Locust. The next schools up are STEM. Stanfield, of course, is coming up, and West Stanley Middle School is the other long one that comes all the way out to the middle, and that one is filling up fast as well.
Again, I'm going to point out Oakboro, for example, because you saw a chart earlier that it was at 102%. That's K-5. Now, with choice, the way the state laws work, that building sits 412 students. So you can put 412 in there, district to school. You still got to abide by the K-3 class size. You don't if it's a choice. But you have roughly 100, I think there's 353 students in there, 281 or so are K-5. So the K-5 is over capacity. But you'd have to take those students, do away with the 6-8 middle, and send them to West Stanley Middle School, where we're already at 113% capacity. So it's either way, it's not a great solution. and all of the schools are over capacity. And I'm pretty sure that is still the 20. It starts with the 22,
It
23
did still start.
ADM.
Yeah, that's correct. He just updated it because the original one, it didn't get read as fast.
So when you look at the map, if you go home and pull it off of board docs, this first study was done in 22, 23, and that's sort of the column right in the middle where the orange starts with Indy at the top. That was the one that was well over capacity.
And that's what he said when he meant he underestimated the schools in the western end, especially Stanfield. That's just a credential. So what's next? Board of Education is looking into other options to accommodate growth as forecasted. There will be discussions on transfers and grandfathering you referenced earlier. And there's 27 non-employee rising first through fifth graders at this current iteration of the plan. If that changes, that number will change. There's also, we're looking at moving into the future. There's a cloudy deed on the Ridgecrest School. That means the board does not outright own all of the property on that school. So it makes it hard for the board to be able to do an improvement on that school until you outright own all of the property. Because the property that you don't outright own runs through several of the buildings. There's a BOE work session on the 3/3/2025 to discuss transfers. That's a Monday, and grandfathering and discussion on individual transfers. If that were to happen, would occur in a closed session event. And also the board's looking, and I don't know why I did that, to address longer term capacity issues, especially at the elementary level. Anything else? Thank you. That's all I have.
Next on the agenda, we had board member comments, so we're going to allow the board, if they would like to make any comments tonight, give them the ability to do that. And I'm just going to start down at the end of the table with Ms. Gibson.
I think I'm okay. I think they can hear me. Thank you anyway.
Yeah, it is.
I want to say to all of you that are here, thank you for coming out. We appreciate you being here. We also appreciate that you took the time to send in questions, and hopefully your questions have been answered through the presentations. And I know that I have even had several emails as well. Some emails I've actually been able to respond to. There may be a couple that I'm needing to get back with. It's a hard decision what our board is faced with. I appreciate Dr. Dennis and Vice Chair Mr. Lisk, and of course our chair, for all the work that they've put into this. It is difficult, and I hope that all of you that are sitting there know that it does pull on the heartstrings, and we want to make the best decision possible. Our board, and I've said this to people before, our board did not cause the growth. Ever since I've been on this board, and I came on the board in 2016, we have been talking about and discussing it's getting ready to explode in the western end of the county. And I have sat on facility committees, finance committees, as well as others on this board. And this is what we've been working on for years now. Applying for the needs-based grant is the number one thing that this board is seeking. We did that last year. Commissioners have to sign off on that. So this is something that we, again, are already in the process of working toward needs-based grants. And if you listen to Dr. Dennis and Mr. Lisk, that is certainly going to be for an addition to West Stanley Middle School. That includes the gym. That is for a new 600 or more capacity Oakboro Elementary School and the land we have there to build it. We are looking at high schools. That is something, though, that right now we've got to take care of elementary and we've got to take care of middle school with the growth that's coming up. So again, I just want all of you, I see people out there that are your teachers, certainly well respected. I appreciate everything that you do. There are people that I see sitting there that are friends of mine. Some of you you have children that went to school with my children. And I know that it does not make you feel any better when I say this, but my own children I experienced with the move that they made in elementary school to another school, and then the move that they made to a high school their freshman year, and you know one. And again, all of our schools in Stanley County are great schools, and we have wonderful staff and wonderful teachers and administrators. And I know you're close to those where your children attend, but if I could reassure you of anything, we have wonderful, wonderful staff everywhere. This board has not made a decision. So that is something that with everything that's been presented, all the data that we have, and a work session that we have coming up, those are the things that we're taking into consideration and there'll be much discussion of. But again, you're here because you care, and you're here because it's pulling at your heartstrings. And we know that. We know that. But thank you. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Allman?
Yeah, I'm actually going to stand up because I like
That's
to
fine.
be able to see. Whoever put this together, thank you, but I've got to look at the people. There's two things that I want to address tonight. The first one is the grant. When we submitted the grant last summer, I sat in a meeting when that was addressed, and from my understanding, we as a board are going to have to do a better job at filling that out in a timely manner and doing it the right way. So I look forward to working with that. The second thing is you guys came out tonight because of your child, and you had to submit questions because of your concerns. I did not vote to dismiss public comments, and I want to address that for myself. I wanted public comments. I wanted the public to be able to speak. I think it's very important to hear from the people that elected us. And when we don't hear publicly from the people that elected us, it's a complete disservice. I apologize as a board member to you guys for not being able to hear you speak tonight, and I wanted to say that publicly. I want to thank you for coming out. I hate that this is a hard subject to talk about, but if you need to contact me directly, please reach out via my phone number. I can give it to you after, or my board email, and I'll be more than happy to speak one-on-one with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allman. Ms. Watson?
I want to thank you all for coming. I know this is a very, very hard decision. But I want to thank Dr. Dennis and Mr. List for putting on this, and Robin. It was a good so that you know what's going on. I know it's hard for your students, but remember they are resilient. I had my daughter moved back to Stanley County, and my granddaughter knew no one. I mean, absolutely no one when she went to school. But she's thriving, doing really good with her grades. And we know that our students are resilient and they will make good decisions. I do thank you for coming. And remember, That doesn't matter to us what we're doing. It's a hard decision, and it will be a hard decision anytime we do anything like this. And every day we go, I pray for these students. I want them to have the best education that they possibly can get so that they can be our leaders of tomorrow, because they will be. And we will be very, very proud of them. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Ms. Poplin?
I'm also going to stand up because for one, I'm short, and two, it's very hard for me to see you at this angle. But I realized we had to do this to be able to have the screen and the live stream. So I want to start off by thanking you all for coming tonight and being in attendance. It shows us that you care a lot about your student and where they are, and we appreciate that. Thank you, commissioners, for coming and hearing us tonight. We may have not caused the growth issue, but we are tasked with the job of dealing with it and coming up with a plan. We must explore all possible scenarios explained to us. I know I have questions and concerns that I'm going to be asking at our upcoming work session about the other possible scenarios. We must address transfers. If we do not address policy 4150, frankly, it's like putting your horses in the barn and leaving the door open and expecting them to stay there. And that's just not going to work. So there are things that need to be looked at and addressed, and I appreciate the fact that Ms. Whitaker has got a work session coming up that we can do that. But I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and listening to the presentation, and caring enough to come out about your student and understanding what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poplin. Mr. Sorensen?
Thank you. I'm Bill Sorensen, and I want to thank each and every one of you parents that came tonight. Okay, it shows that you actually are invested in your children. I myself drove 3 hours in the soup to be here, and the worst part is, before I left, I had to tell a 3-year-old brown-eyed girl goodbye, and she left. Left her. She's in tears. I don't want to medal for that. I want y'all to understand how much I love your kids. This board will not make any move that's going to hurt or injure or jeopardize any child in Stanley County. We love your kids. That being said, how many of you folks are from Locust? Raise your hand, please. Okay. Locust. Yeah.
A little bit louder.
Just trying to get a rough count. How many of y'all from Locust? Okay. And how many of y'all from Stanfield? Okay. Looks like the Locust folks are a little bit better show. Well, I appreciate y'all being here. A couple things just want to talk about real quick. I'm excited about the expansion at Indy. They've got a great program and a great instructional program there. They got the DLI program, and some kids in Stanley County will be sitting in the first new construction classrooms in 20, 30 years. They'll also have new furniture. So I'm excited about that. I totally get the apprehension parents have. Unlike my peers up here, is it not working? Unlike my peers, I don't know what's going on with that other mic. Unlike my peers up here, I traveled, my father was in the Army. I attended 11 different schools before the 9th grade. It is not easy changing schools. It's hard on the kids and it's hard on the families. But what the point I wanted to make is, we're not asking some of you folks to transfer your kids from a great school to a not so great school. I could pull the records for Locust, Stanfield, and Indy and find great things about each one of them. So thank you for coming. Stay involved with your kids and get the word out. Get the word out to your neighbors and friends that this conversation is being had right now, and our work session will be significant. Thank you.
Lisk.
Okay, I'll stand up like the other two. Can you hear me? Um, I'll close it out with I've got friends out here, and I'll extend the same offer that I think it was Mrs. Almond did. I know quite a few of you have emailed. Some I chose to just give a call to. I'm happy to pass my phone number along if you have any questions. Email me, call me. I'm happy to address it. I'm happy to listen. I don't like being in this position to have to do it, to make a vote that I know affects families. Um, uh, Emily, it does pull at my heartstrings. I'm vested in the community. My kids are out here. I grew up in this county. I think I told a few folks earlier, I remember coming through Locust, Ashley, when we were in high school, and it was a 2-lane road. And I believe there's maybe one stoplight. So there's been a tremendous amount of growth out here. And Albemarle was always the place to be. But people want to live here. It's a great place to be. And I feel for your situation. I really do. And I want to be as much a part of the solution as possible, at the same time, affecting the least amount of families and trying to address the longer term need. Because again, if we don't start fixing it now, it's going to be the same issues coming up a few years from now, and as our grandchildren come along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lisk. I do want to thank you all for coming tonight and taking your time. I know it's your children, and that's the most important thing. We intended tonight just to share information. I hope we did share some information for you that was useful. We tried to answer as many of the questions that had been submitted as we possibly could. I did want to let you know that moving forward, the board will be holding a work session. I know you heard several of us mention that. That's going to be on Monday, March 3rd. It'll begin at 10 a.m. in the morning. It actually will be held at the Stanley Academy Learning Center, and that's at 1121 Austin Street in Albemarle. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, that's the old North Albemarle School in Albemarle City. Actually, the meeting will be held there, and it is open to the public, so you're welcome to come and attend. We will try to live stream that also, so you would have the ability to be able to watch that. Also, during our next board meeting is actually going to be on Tuesday, March 4th. It begins at 6:15. You also are welcome to come. We have a public comment section there. You're welcome to come and give public comments if you'd like. We do appreciate your presence. We appreciate the passion that you have for what we're trying to do. It is a difficult situation for us to be in, but it is a decision that we are going to have to make. So we do thank you for being part of the process for tonight. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed? We are now adjourned.